Elon Musk gave a speech a couple days ago, as of when I started writing this essay, wherein he thanked the Trumpist crowd for saving civilization, which was pretty fucking cringe, before saying, "My heart goes out to you," clutching his hand to his chest, then thrusting his arm up and out dramatically as if to metaphorically chuck his heart far out into the crowd. I'm sure he thought it was rather poetic, but really it just came off as kind of awkward, though since I know Musk is an autist, that's not a surprise to me. Add it to the pile with his jumping and Elden Ring loadout. Well, that's what I took from it at least. The entire left wing went absolutely ballistic. The resemblance of his straight-armed gesture to a Nazi hail was all they needed to go off like an ammo dump. Keep in mind, it has been standard practice on the left for some time to disparage their opponents as Nazis and crypto-Nazis, while ironically often calling for Israel to be destroyed themselves, but I repeat a previous essay, regardless of their actual political positions, both as a form of emotional catharsis. Your intense hatred and intolerance of people who disagree with you is more self-justifiable if you can also convince yourself your opponent is morally equivalent to what the Western world typically considers the most evil man to ever live, and as linguistic warfare, to tinge both conscious and unconscious perception of their opponents negatively through constant repetition of accusations of villainy and depravity in hopes that this will inherently bias more people away from supporting the right and thus towards supporting the left. Musk giving out something that resembled a Nazi salute is the perfect gift to their confirmation bias and, so they think, their propaganda strategy. And since they've been telling themselves for years at this point that context and intent don't even need to be contemplated when evaluating the right or wrongness of an action, anyone who says a trans woman isn't a woman is a bigot, no discussion, etc., the idea that Musk did not actually intend it to be a Nazi salute, especially since he has never actually expressed Nazi politics. I mean, he's literally chums with Netanyahu, didn't even cross their minds. That possibility would interfere with the satisfaction they feel from being able to tell themselves they were right all along, that Elon was evil, and therefore it's okay to keep hating him and tell everyone else they have to hate him too. Thus, it is never even entertained. You don't have to talk or act like a Nazi in any substantive manner. So long as the left already doesn't like you, you're liable to be smeared as one anyway. And even further still, if anything you do can be construed as even superficially similar to something the Nazis did. They already wanted to believe it anyway, some of them just need something concrete IRL to staple that desire to so they can tell themselves they're being empirical about it rather than it all being in their head to justify their own intense intolerance of opposition. They've fallen into the exact same mentality as the Trumples. Yes, I'm stealing that term from Destiny. It's fun. Deal with it. Who simultaneously insist they love democracy, but also that elections they lose are rigged. Again, something I pointed out previously when this form of self-reinforcing doublethink was employed by leftists to defend Hamas after the latest spat in Gaza broke out. Meanwhile, as they do this, Zuckerberg literally tried to get away with active suppression of left-wing politics on his platforms before being caught and reversing it, claiming it to be a technical error. You're not fooling anyone, fucko. Even r/conservative didn't buy that. This is substantively outrageous. A tech oligarch actively trying to steer public opinion towards the current regime in order to curry favor for himself with said regime by exploiting the immense sway he holds over public discourse by controlling multiple social media outlets. Yet the outrage over that absolutely, inarguably, was drowned out by the tsunami of anti-Musk screeching over the salute shit. You'd be forgiven for not even knowing Zuck tried to pull this. What I've been racking my brain on is why. Why is a flagrant attempt to suppress the left on social media considered less noteworthy than Elon accidentally miming Mussolini because he's an autist who probably didn't even consider what it looked like? It could simply be that scrutiny on Musk is higher due to his higher profile relationship with Trump and his purchase of Twitter, leaving a lot of progressives with a grudge against him. But it could also be yet another symptom of the modern left's rejection of substance in favor of appearance, which, given that the right already fell into that brain rot thanks to Trump, leaves us with a totally vacuous political landscape. To elaborate, it actually manifests in something I mentioned earlier. Intent doesn't matter. It spawns from the same mindset. Prioritizing appearance is not just easier, but can be more emotionally comforting. How many times has a Trump supporter insisted that Trump is making the US great in some manner just because Trump says so? That other world leaders take Trump seriously because his supporters view him as strong and assertive due to what he says to them and how he says it, rather than evaluating what he actually does. What kind of tough, strong leader makes a decision like, say, to withdraw from Syria because they had a chat with Erdogan and Erdogan convinced him to, only to then do a 180 when it was half completed because the Pentagon dangled the black gold keys in front of him? How does getting fat boy, I believe this is the first time I've actually written that epithet in something posted publicly, so to be clear, I'm talking about Kim Jong-un, to verbally agree to better relations mean it actually happened, even though by the facts on the ground, it changed absolutely fuck all. It's practically religious. It's true because the person wants to believe it. They don't want reality to be other than what they desire. As such, they will twist data, words, images, even actual events to fit their desires rather than the other way around because that allows them to maintain a more positive emotional state. To bring this back to the left, this is what they're doing when they do things like reject intent. Injecting the intent behind a statement or behind an action and focusing purely on the fact that it can cause negative feelings in others allows them to justify a blanket ban upon it. Thus, if they get what they want, totally relieving them of the emotional burden of having to put up with ever hearing it. Insisting one can support Palestine without supporting Hamas is even more similar to Trump-style delusion. Realistically, there is no way to decouple the two, but since they don't want to consciously accept that reality, they simply insist otherwise, regardless of it. Prioritizing DEI over merit either lets you tell yourself you're a selfless moral crusader if you're from a demographic that DEI would discriminate against, or lets you tap into your in-group bias and get vicarious satisfaction if you're from a demographic DEI benefits. You might ask, how does this apply to the obsession with portraying Musk's Spurgy salute as indicative of Nazism? Well, as I said, it's analogous to Trump supporters insisting 2020 was rigged. It justifies intolerance and complete vilification of opposition while still being able to tell yourself you're a Democrat, being literal there, as in supporting democracy, not an autocrat. Nay, it is my opponent who is anti-democratic, for I have mentally construed them as such. Further, the emotional satisfaction that doing this provides, as I said above, it's ultimately what all this shit is about, feels, is simply easier to acquire than it is with Zuck's shenanigans. Elon's gaffe was made publicly on Inauguration Day to a large crowd of Trumples and did, admittedly, visually resemble a Nazi salute pretty closely. If you willfully ignore the context, the jump to Elon Musk as a Nazi is not hard to make. By contrast, Zuckerberg's search bar fuckery was made silently, without announcement, without comment, and was withdrawn and its purpose denied when discovered. It was insidious and, therefore, objectively more dangerous had he gotten away with it. But it did not get eyes on itself the way Musk's speech did for obvious reasons. And Zuckerberg did not explicitly do or say anything in the process that could be as easily used to smear him as the next Hitler as Musk did. You have to read into the event itself and the context of Zuckerberg's suck up with Trump to even begin to make that jump, and we're already talking about a bunch of people who explicitly don't care about intent or context, so they're less inclined to do so even when it would validate their own beliefs because there's an easier source of positive fee-fees on offer at the same time, i.e. Musk's salute. To be clear, I'm not saying this is some kind of ruinous messaging strategy, largely because it appears to not matter very much. Those who were freaking out about it, largely concentrated on Reddit and in Europe, were already anti-Musk anyway, and those gloating about how deranged the left is acting about this are likewise already pro-Musk anyway. But that's kind of the point, and the problem. All anyone cares about is this self-confirmation loop where you construe any event that occurs as fitting a narrative you already want to be true. People want to believe Musk is a Nazi. This is simply an excuse to be reassured in that pre-existing belief. What it signals, however, is that the left has decided to match the right in detachment from reality. Reality is what you want it to be. Data is merely a psychological tool to help convince yourself of how right you already are and how you don't need to change your opinion. In that sense, Trump's brazen exercise of executive power, even pushing beyond what is currently considered constitutional, is not actually that discordant with the current zeitgeist, though to be clear, he is responsible in large part for making it this way, because dialogue between the politically motivated is evidently pointless. When two people can take any given datum and twist it in their heads to justify what they already believe, even when those beliefs are opposed, we're past rational argument being an effective persuasion tool. Blatant example, people voting for Trump, supposedly to counter inflation, even though he also wants to enact a massive tariff regime. All that matters now is seizing and exercising power. Some would say this was always the case, and they're most certainly right about that, but the degree to which it has afflicted the left specifically has, I feel, increased over time. Lefties who tried to contort facts to defend, say, the Soviets in the past were quite marginalized, and even if the left may have been too willing to compromise in the other direction, it lent them credibility compared to the raving religious nutjobs and cynical corporatists spewing falsehoods on the right. In the past decade, however, the far left's emotion-based politics have escaped the university campuses that cultivated them. Graduates of those universities push that agenda wherever they go, which, given the better educated are more often put into positions of importance, heightens their social reach, and their relative volume has been amplified of late by the less educated turning further to the right. Remember, most members of a particular political faction don't have to be radical for that side to become radicalized. The radicals just have to be tame enough that the rest of their side will tolerate them hijacking the agenda, which, being by definition more motivated, they will not hesitate to do. It still feels weird to say the left is truly radical given how many utterly banal milquetoast liberals there are about, but they don't set the agenda. And the more I think about it, the more it occurs to me how absolutely rigid the left can be. The best example is from the very essay that this video is based on. By daring to actually type what I typed in that essay, which I can't say here because it would get the video deleted, there is a considerable chunk of the left, and most importantly, of those who hold power within the left politically and socially, who will never accept me onto their side until the end of time unless I utterly submit to their every whim from this day forth, and even that may not be enough for some. I am by definition evil, and no matter how many points of agreement we may share, I have violated one of their sacred commandments, thus invalidating all other considerations. As I said, it can feel very much like religious dogma, though not of the same flavor. While the right can feel like a cult, circling their savior figures like Trump, constantly repeating to themselves how everything's going to be great and ignore or twist all evidence to the contrary, justifying everything he does because they can't be convinced any of it might be bad. The left currently feels like a theocracy, wedded to a set of unshakable beliefs that cannot be doubted or contradicted whatsoever without being excommunicated by their appointed arbiters of morality and truth. To some extent, I am a hypocrite, because I have always preferred people to be wedded to ideology rather than religion, and that's what these people are technically doing. The problem is that they treat ideology religiously, and ideology has merit over religion in my view of things because it is explicitly a set of subjective preferences, not a claim about the nature of reality that is not actually based on objective fact. If you believe in and push an ideology in a religious manner, however, wherein the justification for your beliefs, consciously anyway, is based on twisting reality to fit what you want to be true, rather than an assertion of your personal preferences, then culturally we're still in the same place because the core issue, denial of reality, has not diminished. Now, instead of people convincing themselves they're under threat from demons by watching the strange behavior of the mentally disabled and exclaiming these people are possessed, we have shit like this freak out about Musk's salute. It's the same mentality. And it's making it harder and harder for me to say I'm on the left, not because my opinions have actually shifted right to any real extent, but because it feels rather cucked to vote for people who, if they knew about some of the opinions I hold, would denounce me as no better than a Nazi, even though I viscerally hate Nazis, because As I said, it operates like a theocracy. There are commandments to follow, and you either follow them, all of them, or you're out. There's no debate allowed. What I ultimately fear is being pushed or even forced away. Left-wing economic policy is unironically the only thing that can save us from the cyberpunk dystopia we seem to be wandering into. But the problem is it currently comes coupled with a litany of other positions that, unlike all the economic stuff, are considered non-debatable. And so in voting for a left-wing candidate, I am often essentially conceding defeat on all other issues for the sake of the economy, assuming that even ends up being followed through on. With parties like the Canadian Liberals or the US Democrats, that often isn't the case. I know for a fact the right has a ruinous economic policy. I know that voting for them is a vote to harm those who are already poor and also drive even more people into poverty. Yet I cannot deny that I have not contemplated voting right anyway, out of pure self-righteous spite, after getting into a spat with a sanctimonious left-winger who demands ideological purity on more than one occasion. I have yet to follow through, but I will not deny that temptation is not there. I suppose then this essay can be considered a note for posterity, and a reminder to myself. Vilify me all you want should I succumb to that spite, but never claim I was not self-aware, for I have here laid out my grievances, my perspective, and how that may very well lead to that outcome. I am not a sheep acting on unconscious bias and instinct. I will not be lumped in with them. Any decision I make on this matter will be done deliberately. I will make sure of that. And perhaps if you feel the same as I, seeing me vent this frustration here is satisfying for you as well. Trust me, you're not alone. I don't know what exactly my strategy for navigating this political landscape should be yet. That's for another time or several. I have not pondered it enough to write anything concrete, but knowing I need one is a necessary, if ultimately obvious, first step.